Hello everybody, Troye here, and today I'm going to be doing yet another installment of albums I have missed. And before anything else, let me just say I once again do apologize. I need to keep making these videos. If I had all the time in the world, I would probably go out of my way and get around to listening to every album on time and get a review out not long after its release. However, a lot of things, especially in fall when things do start getting busy again, once summer's over, I simply just don't have every second of my day dedicated to this. However, I will say that I always go out of my way to listen to as much as I can. And even though I'm a little late with these albums, I am going to be doing quick reviews in this video of the new Killers album, Imploding the Mirage, the new 6ix9ine album, TattleTales, the new Troye Sivan EP, but I mean, with him, I kind of consider his EPs albums, In a Dream, the new Front Bottoms record, In Sickness and in Flames, as well as the new PVRIS album, Use Me. Now, going into this, this is how I start all my videos, with a bit of background. Let's start with the Killers. I quite like the Killers' material from their first few albums. Hot Fuss, Sam's Town, for example, are two great albums in my opinion. No doubt about that. I might be a little biased towards Hot Fuss, honestly. I know that might be the more mainstream one, but I do think genuinely that that album is the closest they have gotten to perfecting their sound, and unfortunately that's their debut album. Obviously Mr. Brightside Down, there are a lot of great hits. I wasn't a huge fan of their latest record before Imploding the Mirage. I thought it was alright, but I thought it was kind of bland, not really doing too much for me. Imploding the Mirage, however, does kind of see a bit of a traditional Killers sound on a lot of tracks. It has that very upbeat, very, like, 80s pop synth sound in there. And, well, this sound never really leaves the Killers. This is throughout all their albums, so it's not like it's a brand new thing that they're just returning to, no. But I think it was executed much better here than it was on the last album, and I think overall track-wise, track by track, the songs just seem to be a bit better quality. Now that being said, I didn't feel too, I didn't feel like so satisfied with this album that I feel like ranking it up with the likes of Hot Fuss or Sam's Town. Many of it felt like those same ideas I've heard over and over again, and a lot of the songs I felt were good ideas. They had good ideas, but they just were not the most complete sounding. I mean, even if they were complete, they were they never led anywhere. It's like, you could tell that they worked on polishing everything, but it just, the songs themselves, I feel like they were good ideas, but they never really got past that phase. So a lot of these songs, well, they sound spectacular, they don't go anywhere a lot of the time. And unfortunately, well, there is good atmosphere on this album, and I do enjoy that. I just wish that the songs themselves provided more than what they actually do. I will say, My Own Soul's Warning, the opening track, I did enjoy. I think it honestly probably is the highlight for me on this album. It has some good electro synth stuff going on there. But for the most part, I was kind of just left somewhere in the middle with this album. I know the Killers could do better, so I was a little disappointed, but I still enjoyed it. So that's why I'm giving Imploding the Mirage a 6 out of 10, which is, you know, anything above a 5 is good, anything below is bad. So 6 out of 10 is above average. The next album I will be doing a quick review of is the new 6ix9ine album, TattleTales. Oh, 6ix9ine. Where do you even start with 6ix9ine? First off, he goes by 6ix9ine. But, yeah, he was locked up for quite a while, and now he's out, he's free. And almost immediately after his release, he put out the song Gooba and a few other singles, and I did a track review of Gooba. I don't know if any of you guys here watched that, or if you guys remember me doing a track review of Gooba, but I clearly made it a point to say it was not the worst thing I've heard from him. I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. If it was an album, Gooba would be a 5 out of 10. But I was kind of hoping maybe there would be a glimmer of hope. I was hoping that, you know, Gooba wasn't the worst thing I'd ever heard. Maybe he was gonna go a bit aggressive, but have a bit more focus and a bit more stylistic path in front of him. But that really didn't happen. The opening track, Locked Up Part 2, is the highlight. It's the best song on this album. The album starts with its best song. I actually genuinely enjoyed Locked Up Part 2, only to get disappointed track after track after track going forward. Now, the reason I was disappointed was not necessarily because each and every track was so horrible I couldn't listen to it. I've heard worse albums this year. But just the songs themselves are just so average, standard trap that I've come to expect from 6ix9ine, and a lot of them didn't have that anger and edge that I actually enjoyed from Gooba. It didn't have that aggressive, raspy, screaming vocals that I actually sort of guilty pleasure enjoy from 6ix9ine. No, half of them were just auto-crooning, and that just doesn't work for me with him. But I will say most of the songs ended up being average, not horrible, so I have settled on giving this a 4 out of 10. That's not a great review. That is a negative review. That's below 5, but, you know, well, I should have expected this. I mean, it's 6ix9ine, let's be real here. The next album / EP I will be doing a quick review of is the new Troye Sivan EP, In a Dream. Now, I gotta say, out of this bunch of albums I'm reviewing, I will just say it right up front. This is my favorite one I have heard. Troye Sivan has definitely always been in the public eye ever since he had some breakout hits in Australia and has kind of transitioned into more mainstream audiences, and I believe he came from YouTube. I can't remember, though. I wasn't really there. I wasn't really paying attention when he blew up. But I will say, I have appreciated his style of pop music, and to be honest, though, none of his real stuff up to this point, even though I have enjoyed it, I liked it, I never thought it was anything that great. However, I will say he actually, I think, did go a little further on this project, and I like it. In a Dream is really well executed, atmospheric synth pop, and just pop in general. It's not even all synth pop. Like the song Take Yourself Home has this great electronic ending half of it, the ending portion. A very good outro. The song Easy just has a good vibe. This whole project to me has a very good vibe. Track after track, even though it's only 20 minutes long, each of them all go together very well. They all complement each other stylistically, lyrically, and his mix of auto-tune crooning as well as his natural singing voice come together quite well. I've brought this up in some of my reviews of some hip-hop albums this year from artists, from rappers who also like to sing, that I actually really enjoy the sound of when people sing with auto-tune if they know what they're doing and they know how they're doing it, if it's for a stylistic purpose. The main guy that comes to mind is Don Toliver and like Travis Scott. And while Troye Sivan's far from being a rapper, he does that quite well compared to, say, a Justin Bieber, who he has a good voice. Personally, I just think he does not use it in the right way. Troye Sivan knows how to use his voice, knows when to use the auto-tune, knows when to use the effects, and it adds to the atmosphere of this album. It's very big, it feels like nighttime in a way. It feels like a summer night. It's a very, very uplifting album in a sense, but with pretty good lyrics for a pop EP. And I have heard this sound done by the likes of Ariana Grande and a lot of other bigger pop artists out there, but something about the way Troye Sivan executes it on In a Dream is just much better executed, much more authentic, and even though it's only 20 minutes long, I have very little negative to say about any of the songs. I am giving this an 8 out of 10, which is a really good review. I'm not giving this higher than an 8 out of 10 because it is an EP, it is shorter, and unfortunately because it's shorter, it doesn't leave as lasting of an impact on me, especially when I'm comparing it to albums that are 40, 50, 60 minutes long. But for the most part, almost every song on here is well executed. Troye Sivan, I am looking forward to listening to your projects, as I know he's always putting out EPs and projects like that. I'm hoping he continues down this stylistic path, because I like this a bit more darker and dreamier sound. And yeah, Troye Sivan, In a Dream, 8 out of 10. Really good project. Recommend everybody check that out. The next album I will be looking at and reviewing is the new Front Bottoms album, In Sickness and Flames. And a bit of background for me in the Front Bottoms. I believe I've talked about it in a video. I've talked about them in a video where I was talking about music that I kind of grew up with. And Front Bottoms was one of those bands, especially their self-titled album from, I believe, 2011 or 2010. I can't remember the exact year. That album to me is the quintessential, like, acoustic, folky, poppy punk. And they were younger there. It was immature in the best way possible. But this album, you could tell they're still going for that in a sense, but it doesn't come across as natural, partially because they're older, partially because it's just very polished. There's sort of a forced edge and a forced whininess to it that I don't hate. It sounds like the front bottoms I've come to know and love, but it just doesn't feel nearly as authentic. And while Montgomery Farewell is a song that does come across well, and even Everyone Blooms, the opening track, which I reviewed earlier this year, even though that's a solid track that has some good melodies and just an overall good feel to it, like I said, the polished production, the layered guitars just doesn't feel that it doesn't work necessarily with this style. It makes them sound more like a streamlined pop punk band that's older now than the unique band they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were one of the main frontrunners in that folk style acoustic, pop punk you were hearing. And now they've kind of just adopted a more standard sound in many spots. And unfortunately, that does drag this album down for me. I've settled on giving it a 5 out of 10. I feel indifferent because I do like the front bottom sound generally. I like their overall style, and writing wise, it's not like they've gotten worse. But it's just, it feels odd having it be so polished, and now that they're older, that they're singing about roughly the same topics they would have been singing about 10 years ago, and making the music in a similar way. So that's my main issue with this album. In the Sickness and Flames is a good album, don't get me wrong. It's just, it would have been better if it was less polished and released a few years ago. So 5 out of 10 for the new Front Bottoms album. I don't know if you could hear the ice cream truck outside. The Entertainer. The last album I will be looking at before I go today is the new PVRIS album, Use Me. I believe this is their third album, and their last album with their guitar player after some sexual assault allegations came out, I believe. He just got fired from the band prior to the release of this album. So, while that's unfortunate, I feel bad for that band. I hope they, get back to speed, get back on their feet, and keep going. Their sound to me has always been an odd one. To me, they've always felt more like a solo act than they have a band. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say. What do I necessarily mean by that? Well, I know they're one of those groups that have had a lot of electronic elements in there. And while obviously, I don't have anything against bands with electronic elements in there, I like it when you can still hear what every member is contributing. And to be completely honest with you, on this album, there are many instances where it just sounds like she's singing over a track that was just made by a producer, and that kind of drags it down a little bit because I like being able to pick out each and every part. That being said, the actual album itself was executed relatively well. I actually think some of the more acoustic incorporated tracks did end up turning out the best, just because I think that it's interesting to hear when a band primarily rooted in, more, electronic synthetic roots tackles more acoustic music and actually does it well. And I think PVRIS does it quite well. The song Deadweight might be my favorite, but for the most part, this album is really standard of what you've kind of come to expect from PVRIS. And while I do have a lot of criticisms of it, it was a well-executed album, and I've still on giving this a 6 out of 10, which, like I said before, is a little above average. So it's just above a 5, so it's a little above average. So yeah, for the most part, out of these 5 albums, I will say that Troye Sivan, In a Dream, was probably my favorite one I have heard. The 6ix9ine album was probably my least favorite, just because I know it sounds really weird to say, but I actually did have some hope for that album, just because I thought Gooba did fit his style quite well. And even the opening track, with a little bit of a change of sound, but it comes across very well. But instead, we got a weird, TattleTales standard trap album with some reggaeton even thrown in there, and it wasn't well executed. But yeah, these are the 5 albums from The Killers, 6ix9ine, Troye Sivan, Front Bottoms, and PVRIS that I unfortunately missed. I do plan on being more on track lately because I just put out my Marilyn Manson one today, so this is probably one of the few days I'll be posting twice in a day. I apologize if that's too much, but I wanted to get this video out of the way. That is it for now. I'll put all these ratings that I gave these albums in the description below. and I will be back for more reviews coming soon.